evening, Deirdre.
Good evening, Tom. You're
Stephen,
sitting in
your
front of a
boss.
dam. Why don't you explain to everyone where you are?
So this is Hoover Dam. If you don't know it, looking at it from the uh, the downside of the lake. Um, but this is a workshop. I mean, I wish I were there. I'm not. I'm about, I don't know, 300 miles south of there. Um, Hoping that holds, because if it doesn't, I'm in trouble. Uh, but um, but anyway, we're talking about artificial intelligence. It's our artificial intelligence work group and discussion group, and we're joined by all of our friends from Colombia.
Yes,
Um, Tonight we are. We have others coming, so we have people joining us. But there's a meet, uh, evening of meet, and so with that, Deirdre, I'm going to let. This is about data, and we called it the crisis in data. I think is how you title it, right, Deirdre?
that's what I called it because you and I have been seeing and discussing a number of strange things about data and AI in the business press. And I thought it would be an interesting idea for us to just put together a jumble of ideas, not give a lecture, but just outline a couple of points and just start a discussion around these and see what our informed people who are attending here think about it. By the way, I did say I was going to be talking about the book How Data Happened by Chris Wiggins and Matthew Jones. And I'm not really going to be talking about this sort of as a nonsense or not type of thing, but this is an interesting book if you feel like reading a book on data, because what it gets into is something that's peripheral to our discussion here anyway. And that's that that AI is not a monolith. There are different trains of thought throughout the field of AI. And we'll get to that in a few minutes, actually. But this gets into the mathematical beginnings and then how the mathematical interacted with the neural net people and how one side had power and the other side gets power and how they interact and so forth and how everything progresses. And then how the field of statistics had to adapt to accommodate some of the mathematics that's being done now. It's a very interesting read, but I'm not going to go into it really beyond that today. But what I am going to talk about, and I'm going to share my screen here, because I always have to start with some slides, although I'm going to take the slides down pretty quickly, is this is a continuation of of our discussions about AI. Talking, whoops, we've been talking about AI. We've had our one workshop, we've had a second workshop, this all about the literature and how it's very difficult for leaders to make decisions about AI. And I think some of the things we talk about today will reinforce those points. We had the discussion group on use cases. Then for those of you who have not yet had the pleasure of watching the video of the interview that Tom and I did with Srinivas, we encourage you to watch this. It's very erudite, very interesting and informative, and you can find it out on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And then I did the Nonsense or Not about the age of AI and the human future by Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and Daniel Huttenlocher. And it's actually kind of interesting right now when the world is at a state of heightened tension to be thinking about some of the points that they make about the use of AI in weaponry and about the capabilities of the militaries and so forth. I'm not going to go into that today. You can again watch our video of that nonsense or not, if that topic interests you. And what we're going to do today, as I said, we've been seeing some strange things in the press and just want to almost accumulate some ideas and this is not going to be a lecture. This is going to very much be a discussion. I'll define what I mean by some terms and then encourage anyone to just jump in whenever. the availability of data, the quality of data, the training using data, and the results are all vaguely connected, although there are different aspects to them. The use of data gets into something that I'm really starting to see a lot of discussion about, which is, in effect, what are the tech companies out in Silicon Valley thinking they're doing when they're pursuing AGI when no one but them is really interested in it, while everyone else wants AI to be working along a more business productive pathway. And there are some questions behind that that I want to sort of get into. But that's what we're talking about. And with that, I'm going to take down the slides and just talk with you directly. So what I mean about the availability of data is this. High quality data textual data from the internet will have all been used by 2028. That's not long, that's not far out there. They're talking about a data wall. When there's a time when there's nothing left out on the internet to be scraped and used in training. Now, we all know that there are problems with the scraping anyway, that there are a lot of copyright violations going on. And this starts to touch on another of the points, the quality of the data out there, that we all know that there's a lot of junk out on the internet. And there's no assurance that in all of this scraping and accumulation and reuse of data sets that may or may not have been standardized and cleaned and so forth, that there are starting to be questions about not only whether what has been going on has not been using high quality data, but whether going forward in some of the ways they're talking about trying to get around this data wall, the quality of the data used in AI training is going to drop. And this is not just me speculating. I'm starting to see allusions to this in places like The Economist or the MIT Tech Review, or just some allusions in, say, the Wall Street Journal, the business press. This hasn't quite made it to standard communications yet, although it may get there. Now, some of the things that are said is there's starting to be conversation about what they're calling post-training data. I'm sure some of you have heard about this. The whole idea is using whatever data is available up until we hit the data wall. And then after we hit the data wall, then humans come in and take some of the results of the AI projections, working with the results, come up with a new set of data to feed back and do additional training. And I'm sitting here saying, there has got to be a problem here. Not only are we starting to diminish the quality of the data, we're also introducing a lot of human oversight of the, or human taking of the results of the AI algorithms working, doing something to it undefined, and then trying to train again. And this sounds to me very circular and a reduction in the quality because we weren't sure of the quality to begin with, and we're not sure of the quality coming around. And I think what we're also starting to do, and this is another aspect that we're starting to hear about, we're starting to hear about, say, the cloud service providers saying, don't worry, everyone, we're putting AI algorithms out in our cloud, and anyone can use our AI algorithms out there to do your AI work. Now, we all know that for an AI algorithm to do good work, to produce valid results, there has to be a connection between the data sets used for training, the quality of the training, and then the quality of the results and the testing of the results, the proving of those results before they're used. And what I see being set up, and if I'm wrong about this, please someone tell me, is that a lot of people are just going up to the cloud, pulling algorithms without knowing what the data sets or have been used for training, and using them and getting God knows what results. So this is all part of, and it's a situation that's going to get worse once we hit the data wall in about 4 years and so forth. Another solution being talked about is the use of synthetic data. And what they mean here is data created by, quote, machines, which theoretically will then be limitless. Now, the conversations that I've seen out there have just presented this as a, quote, option. They haven't specified the machines. I've got to believe that this is related to this post-training that we've already heard about, that algorithms will run, they'll come up with data sets, and that these will come around and be used in training again without us knowing about the quality of the data sets used initially, and therefore having no sense of the quality of the data that will now be used in training that's now being called synthetic data, which is supposed to reassure us in some ways. They're also talking about step-by-step approaches with the LLM creating an answer by first generating many steps. And then as this is described, I swear to you, I'm reading this, I copied this out of, I believe this is out of The Economist, which tends to be a fairly reliable source. The LLM creates an answer by first generating many steps, then a helper AI identifies which of these steps is best and works building on it. Then the LLM takes synthetic data to start from the step that was identified by a helper AI and then further train that step using the synthetic data. Does anyone feel that quality issues are starting to come up here? Um, or am I alone in questioning the value of this? There's another aspect to this, and this is something I'm sure you've all heard of, and maybe not put it into this context. And as Professor Cowan and I have been talking about, a lot of what we have to do now is put a lot of these things we're hearing in some sort of context. And this is the changes in the terms of service documents by people like Google and Amazon and Microsoft and unfortunately Apple. I say unfortunately Apple because I use Apple devices. And this was something that really hit the press about 2 weeks ago. But the idea is that they've all changed their terms of service agreements, allowing them to go beyond the public data that is available out on the internet and presumably through this synthetic data and presumably through these solutions getting around the data wall and so forth, to access our private data that is generated by us using our devices. That is, that they would tap into the work that we do on our devices and scrape it to use as training data. And this all comes back to they're very much aware that in another 3.5 years, there will be no more public data available. And they've gotten pushback on this clearly. And in response to the pushback, they say, don't worry, we won't use your names and we will make sure that you're not identifiable. Now, why don't I have a deep feeling of confidence in all of this? In fact, I wrote down a note that they've got to be kidding, that all of what I'm talking about is giving me a deep sense of a lack of confidence in the tech companies. Now, I'm going to stop at this point and encourage comments, questions, and so forth before going on to some other points. What do you all think about this stuff? Amit, you're smiling. What do you think about this?
I read somewhere that Elon Musk is going to have iPhones in a Faraday cage for all of his employees before they enter his facility, because the new iOS has ChatGPT or OpenAI embedded. And then the question is, how deep does that embedded, how deep is it embedded? And does it provide, Apple has always been very good at giving the power to the user to
Yeah.
turn on or off. I hope, it is my hope that they would do that even for this, that even though it might be embedded within the OS, it by default is turned off and then gives the user the access or the option to turn it on. But it is scary. This whole thing is, and I'm seeing a lot of articles on LinkedIn about Copilot that's being a failure. I'm seeing a lot of things about, I just read recently that 3 of the top people from OpenAI left OpenAI, one of them going to Anthropic,
Yeah.
and the others doing something else. So that just brings to the question on their ethics and what's going on for top leadership to be evacuating in this manner.
Yeah, I want to jump in because I want to ask you some questions about what you just said and take this further, but I do want to mention one thing. I've been watching the Olympics. I love the Olympics. And I don't know if any of you have been watching the Olympics, but Microsoft has been out there advertising Copilot. And they show a scenario where a man is staring at his computer screen and he says, I have a 150-page report and I have to boil this down to a 5-minute presentation. And he turns to Copilot and he presses some buttons and you can see some workings, and Copilot comes up with summaries and he says, put it in a table form, and it's in a table form. And the man says, now give me some graphics, and up comes some graphics. And I'm looking at this and saying, you know, this, for someone who doesn't know this stuff, this looks kind of cool. But for someone like me, I'd be scared to death about trusting one word that comes out of this man's mouth in his presentation.
Well,
Knowing
Deirdre, think about how many transcription AI services we tested and what kind of results we got back, both in summary and in
that's
total
something
text.
to talk about. That
Right.
we've been talking about creating right now we have something like, what is it, 32, 35 videos out on YouTube that we've been recording. And we've gotten some requests for transcripts of these. So we figured, well, there's no way that we're going to sit down and type out a transcript. So we started to look at some AI services and seeing how well they might do in creating transcriptions of our video. And one that came highly recommended from Bob Tuttle, whom all of you probably have encountered in some of these sessions. And he said, this is great. And I think it was Otter. This was Otter,
It was Otter, yeah.
which apparently is a Google thing. But anyway, we ran one of our videos through Otter, and I swear to it literally took me 3 hours to clean up the transcript to the point where I felt we could even post it. Now, mind you, this wasn't just rewriting it into good prose. This was doing things like spelling my name correctly, spelling book titles correctly, using standard vocabulary, making sentences work. Otter had no sentence sense. It didn't understand where a sentence starts and stops, or where a paragraph starts and stops, and so forth. And if this was the only thing available, you could say, wow, they're really getting started in figuring this stuff out. But it was pretty darn bad. And then we tried another one, Tom, and I forget the middle step one, and it was better. But then we tried one, the third one we tried was called Nota, N-O-T-T-A. That was pretty good.
Mhm.
It was by no means perfect, but you could tell that, and I think, Tom, you said this came out of Germany or
No,
something.
it's Japan.
Japan. Because this Nada, it had sentence sense. You could tell that it had been trained to recognize sentence structure and paragraph structure so that someone like me would not have to go through and put in punctuation or start paragraphs or something. My guess is that it would only take me about half an hour, no more than that, to clean up a transcript of the same video, not the 3 hours that it would take Otter to do. So it's getting to be pretty good and along these lines, and it only spelled my name in one way, while Otter spelled my name something like 15 different ways in the course of one transcript. You know, that sort of thing. So it's just, I don't want to ramble on about this except to give you the wisdom of our experience with this. But it's that anyone using these tools has very little confidence in the output without a lot of cleaning up. Well, the way Microsoft is advertising Copilot, certainly on the Olympics, is that you just press some buttons and out comes a perfect product. And if people are then using Copilot, I can understand why it's falling into the failure category. Although I had
Have any of you all used a Copilot? So I have.
I have not.
Just ask.
Is Copilot? Is that what
It's
what's
on the
embedded to
Microsoft
Bing?
platform. Yeah,
Is that what it's
It's
embedded
Bing.
in Bing?
it's
Yeah.
awful, guys. I mean, I have tried using it because I've asked questions of it. I've asked it to summarize things. I've asked it to take. It's awful, buggy, doesn't give you good results, and it's too inconsistent. You know, one of my tests is you ask it a complicated question 5 times and see how variable the answers are, and they're all over the place. You know, and just, I mean, I see you nodding, Amit, because we know that's, and Sharina also knows that it's the test of how well does it replicate itself, right? And or how variable is it, and what is it doing to itself, right? Is it really learning? And it's awful. Copilot's awful. I tried to get Copilot to tell me how to use Copilot and couldn't do it. Because I have to run Microsoft, unfortunately, because it's the simulator for my pilot stuff. So I have to run a whole platform, a gaming platform for my simulators. And I said, explain to me how I'm going to use this. And it could not. It was like I might as well have been speaking in German to somebody that speaks English. The other thing is summarization. Not only did we tested not for Otter and all these, we tested, and I tested a bunch of others I didn't expose the Deirdre to. I will say, of all of them, probably Apple's built-in transcription was better than anything. You know, I could take and read or actually take it and put it up to the microphone of my computer, and it actually did a better job than anything did. So I mean, I could have, you know, it's just not built for it yet. I would say nobody really did a good job of digesting, right? Everybody gave you a summary. So not only did they give you a transcript, did they give you a summary? Nobody really did a good job on the summary. Although I would say Noda did about the best, right, Deirdre, of all the summaries?
of the ones I've seen, Noda was definitely the
Or
best.
Noda or Nada or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. I mean, but we know this, right? There's a difference between marketing AI and real AI. And so, you know, have any of you all had experience with these things? The difference between the marketing version, I know Sharina, you have, but you know, you can help us with this. But you know, Cheryl, have you used any of this stuff? Are you all using any of this stuff that you know about that is, you know, where you're actually using learning algorithms, or didn't you say you were using some of the algorithms that are built into some of this products?
Yeah, we use Copilot, and then we actually have an AI firm to work with our data right now.
So what's your experience with any of this stuff? Are you getting into any of that, or are you just using the results and testing it?
Yeah, not very much. I mean, I tried Copilot for some tax regulations. It wasn't right. No.
Yeah, that's right. Of all people, they shouldn't try that on you.
Yeah, no, yeah, the taxes, yeah, their tax advice wasn't right.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Cheryl's specialty is in testing product. So, and I think that's only one of the things you do, but testing the product. So,
yeah, I haven't tested anything the new the firm has written yet.
I mean, some very narrow stuff is being done really well, I have to say. There are a few companies that are narrow stuff. And Srinivas, we talked about that a little bit. You know, we're doing a series of discussions with Srinivas where we're getting, and he's willing to spend whatever time it takes. And we've got the first one where he went through what we talked about, where he went through a whole discussion about, you know, the fundamentals of AI. But then the next one he's going to do is take apart a few AI use cases from beginning to end. How do you get there? You know, how do you back into it? All that kind of stuff. And then we're going to take him down various paths, and he's going to help us because he's lived this for years. But well, so your conclusion, Cheryl, on Copilot, it's not ready for prime time yet?
No, I've had employees use it for their performance reviews, and I can tell, like for their self-review. And you know immediately that they didn't write their self-review themselves.
Yeah.
Does your
That makes
organization
sense.
limit, are you on a internal network where you limit what your organization can go out to, where Copilot's your only
Copilot's
usable
the only
platform?
one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's how you know if, okay. Go same situation. I have written performance reviews as well with ChatGPT, but it's outside the organization. I'll email it to myself, and then they go up. It gets briefed. Everyone gets their awards and everything, but everyone says it's been great. But I haven't done it with Copilot.
Anyone else have some experience with? I mean, as Srinivas, I know you do. So.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I have seen, I mean, it's only useful for the programming where it is allowed in the organizations. And that is not like what they are claiming 60, 70% efficiency now. It's like 25 to 30% where you can templatize some of the code. Only eligible to that extent, or converting one language code to the other. But again, somebody has to sit and review the code, fine tune it, all of that would be there. Expecting Copilot doing everything, it's not there yet. To the best of my research, I spoke to people, it's sufficient for the tune of 25 to 30%, not beyond that.
Okay.
And completely relying on that for the NLP instructions and all, it's not there yet. As they're advertising, everything is taken care. Whatever you see on the YouTube and other videos, maybe for very specific limited use cases, but not in general. That's what is my personal opinion.
That makes sense. And that makes perfect sense. Amit, have you had any experience with that at all?
Copilot, not yet, because we are on the government cloud. So Copilot is yet to be released sometime in the fall. But I have been using Claude. I somehow prefer Claude over ChatGPT, and I've been using it for some very technical specific for my startup. Asking it very, very specific questions in terms of chemical combination, treatment combinations. And it's been surprisingly positive, especially Claude. I asked the same question to ChatGPT, and I get very generic answers. Whereas when I do it for Claude, it gives me something where I can think about and explore further. And the more I ask it, it kind of, in a way, it's not as repetitive as ChatGPT. It goes deeper into the context and the information. So, I mean, I've been using it mainly for that purpose. And we are exploring in our company to make it more of a RAG, upload documents. HR, the perfect use case for us is the employee handbook. It's a 100-page handbook. And we are piloting just using some LLMs wrapping around that information and asking it very specific questions. So it does not go out to the internet, but the responses are only contained within the information uploaded. So I'll keep you guys posted on how that comes about.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've seen is the same thing, Amit, that when you have very narrow applications, that some people that at companies now that are when they're narrowly focused, they've got some pretty well done algorithm. But again, you can get your hands around the training, you can do all that kind of stuff. Amit, Srinivas, is that what you're seeing too, that when you see these narrow applications?
As you pointed out, it's for some specific applications. One of the demo that I have seen, in fact, I have access to that demo too. It's for document summarization that they have used for the legal documents. And it was able to, they have used two models, Claude as well as the ADA model from the OpenAI. And they felt Perplexity.ai, that those models are better than the OpenAI and as well as the Claude. But it was able to summarize better, and it was able to answer the questions well. Still, there is some hallucination. They claim roughly around 30% that they see when they test. But primarily, it gives all the information, whoever are connected with the case, summary of the people who are connected with the case, the chronology order of the case developments over the last 10 years, 20 years, whatever, based on the document. So all that AI insights, the personas, and the document references, it's able to give correct. But where the hallucination lied when I tested again and again, because they gave me the access to the demo instance, is when you want to go deeper and deeper for the correct answers. And there I see a lot of unrelevant data, but at the outset, it gives pretty good summary. When there are a bunch of 10 documents, again, the summary is given as each individual document. So they were trying and fine tuning it to have a perfectly, making sense. So they want to go into the market with their existing product on top of this document summarization. So, but that fine tuning, that effort specific to that particular domain and the document, such as a legal, a clinical summarization within the sphere of an organization. So that is a very, pointed effort to ensure that the hallucination is minimized. As of now, anybody can promise that it's all taken care. It's not there yet. The testing frameworks or the overall approach or the quality or the hallucination level, all of that. But that is the best example I have seen, to the tune of almost 70% accuracy.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that Deirdre brought up was this issue of training data. And, a lot of people are saying, a lot of people I trust in this game are saying, if you really want good answers, come after 2023, when a lot of the data on the internet is now, you might be able to call some of it synthetic data, but it's data that's been generated by AIs and put out on the internet. So you're now getting this cross-pollination of data. So to imagine what this means, it's like when you cross genetics that are too closely aligned. So think about where I come from, where relatives intermingle, and you end up with problems right in the south of the United States because the genetics are not far enough away. And so if you want to think about the same problem with data, what happens if the data is just replicating on itself? And is it really, and it's using itself to train itself? There's another aspect of this, is when it pulls in data that it shouldn't pull in because it didn't know that it should exclude that data. There's a lot of question, and this is something that Srinivas gets into in the first recording, but we'll get into more and more, is this guardrailing of the algorithms, so that you guardrail yourself in how it trains itself. So I think it's worth us just talking a little bit about that subject and how sophisticated do we think it has become, because the whole issue of these algorithms is, it's everything, you can take an existing AI algorithm and guardrail it so it looks like a rule-based algorithm, right? And just make it so it doesn't teach itself anything, it doesn't learn. It just does what it does. Well, that's might as well be a rule-based algorithm. So the question becomes, though, is, where do you think we are in all this? And are we approaching this in a smart way? So I'll give you an example. One example from the two different references that I think I mentioned to a few of you a minute ago. One of them brought up a point about they are creating their own version of ChatGPT. And they said, but they're trying very hard to filter out data that has an inappropriate bias. And their definition of bias is as close to factual truth as possible. And they use the example, and I'll give you the example so that you have it, so that this will help us with this question. And by the way, I didn't get this, but I haven't read Clark's book, but I did see the movie, the 2001 movie. The point behind it, have you all seen this? Do you all know the 2001 movie? Have you seen this? So, oh, Stephen, man. Oh, Amit. Oh, man. You guys, I gotta tell you, this is, Cheryl, have you seen this? And Srinivas, have you seen it? No. Okay. Well, then this is, okay. So and Deirdre, of course, didn't see it. You missed the name. 2001, A Space Odyssey. But the idea was that when you say something dramatic if you're not careful with how you train an AI with its instructions, you can, by not being careful how you train it, you can have it do something you do not intend, because it, by and large, is itself executing the optimization. And there are a lot of other examples. You all know the paperclip example is the famous one, and that's also a very old scientific story. Essay, one-page essay, scary. You know about this, the optimization of paperclip? Oh, come on, where have you all been? This is now you can tell I am truly an AI nerd. Now, Srinivas is helping us try to understand. And Srinivas, you have a whole theory. Why don't you give us a second on your theory on this? Because I think it would help, your thought on how AI is best used. And by the way, there are other people that believe this too, right? I mentioned Musk believes this. A couple of other people in the industry believe it too. They say it, some of them say it differently than Srinivas. Some say it exactly the way Srinivas does. But I think this would help us in this discussion, because ultimately, and this is what, Professor Silberstein keeps saying, we are being asked to incorporate this on a regular basis in our businesses. We're being pressured to do it, right? Because people are being told all along, if you're not using this, you're falling behind, right? And we're being told that all the time in the press or anywhere. I mean,
it's all over LinkedIn. It's insane how much
exactly
they make you feel that you're a dummy if you're not doing AI, like bottom line.
Yeah.
It's, and it's in your face all the time. But I think those are the same people. I think if you go back to the Bitcoin and the metaverse, you'll probably have those same people posting about Bitcoin and metaverse and how that stuff's going to take over, and
how
the
metaverse
cycle and the bandwagon and making the noise.
But there are valid uses of this, right? And I mean, I'm playing in one in health in the healthcare area. That's really valid, but it's, as Srinivas says, and he has an interesting way of looking at all of this. And you've heard him, he's got how correct is it percentage, right? And you heard him what he said about some of these. One of them he saw that was very specific was in the 70, but when it was very narrow, very focused, very good. But when you said Copilot, you see right now is in the 20s, in the 20 range, right, Srinivas? So why don't you take a second? Because I think Srinivas can take in a few minutes here, and I know we've spent a lot of time circling around to different issues, but I think Srinivas, you could help us narrow down the thinking on this and figure out, because ultimately what I'd like us to be able to leave here with today is, all right, we've talked our way around some other issues here and some of the problems with the existing stuff. How could we be looking at this stuff differently for potentially using it in our organization. So Srinivas, I'm going to turn it over to you for the last, time here.
Sure. I mean, what I explained in our talk is the same thing. I mean, in the short term, I'm not looking at a long term because there is a lot of scope that has been envisaged. A lot of money went into the market, into these startups, a lot of possibilities that people are talking about, and the knowledge that we have. For me, it's like 4 weeks old, which is like a generation old in the current market. I didn't get a chance to look at the new the Gamma model that came in this week, the lightweight AI model from Google, right? The small language models, how they are working. And before even I read that, this new lightweight model came in. I don't know what it is doing yet. So every day something new coming in. But the bottom line, as you're hearing from everybody in the call here, is the Copilot is not working, and you see a lot of articles that it's a junk, and you see a lot of use cases where it is not producing the results that it is expected to be. So the hype is, there is a lot of hype. When it hits the reality, bottom line is you need to fund it for a use case, right? When the funding comes, everybody would look at how far I can rely on this particular technology. Today, we are not there yet. So where we are coming there is existing use cases where AI is being used or automation is being used already. Can I infuse AI into this particular use case to a certain extent? And can I start using these new models, GenAI enabled models? And if yes, to what level? Again, it all depends on the guardrails. The second case that I told, the first case going to AI infusing into the automation, AI infusing into whatever they're already doing, the success rate is a little bit higher there compared to using these GenAI models from the POC level that it was there last year to the level where it is going into the production. Yesterday, I've seen somewhere somebody claiming from IBM that they have already rolled out over 1,000 projects on GenAI into production, and they're all successful. So, but then when I spoke to one of those clients who have been using those models seriously they had around 2,000, 3,000 stores, out of which they rolled out around 150 plus stores with the GenAI enabled, prompt engineering enabled models, and they're not happy with the results. So they're now rolling back and see what to be done. How do they have to do it? So my market understanding so far is it is still evolving. It will take another 6 months, 8 months to at least get into those use cases where you can roll out confidently into production. At this moment, if you see, it could be companies are still rolling out, but that are more internal facing. Something like, as you just pointed out, a virtual SME. That means a search for internal knowledge. A virtual SME is a good use case. Definitely it works to a great extent. The people who are using it internally have to use their judgment over on top of what the model gives, because that is internally faced. They already understand about the organization to a great extent. They will be able to make the right call and take the right call whether to use it fully or not. But then rolling that out to the public, and that's the classic case of Air Canada. I'm still not confident, or I didn't come across any use case where a company is fully using a production-ready version of GenAI. It's not there yet. And then the most important aspect is the testing frameworks, the data security aspects, the GenAI security aspects, as well as simple testing of how much the hallucination is able to be controlled. If it is not controlled at all, to what extent? I mean, maybe 10%, 20%, 30%, and that they have to use to fine tune their guardrails framework, right? And how much is okay to go into the market? 70%, 80%, or what? Traditionally, we have been using AI technologies like document understanding. Even if it is 70%, 75%, 80%, people are using it. because again, it is internal back office oriented. So you're adding the knowledge of internal SMEs on top of it. Now, fully productionized, I think we have to wait. But infusion of AI to ease the work of the existing employees, train them all to make a judgment, make a call of how, to what extent we can use this. I think that is also a large. It depends on use case to use case within an organization. So that's what is my 2 cents there.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So, so if I were to summarize this back, and Srinivas goes into a great deal more subtlety in the first interview that we did on this point. But his point is, look, this is really valid at the PO. I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it back to you, Srinivas, to make sure that we have it down properly. It's useful at the POC level, but where its real use can be valid is internally, where you have a limited data set and you can make judgments on what it's telling you the answer is. And because the validity is not high enough yet to be able to, in your mind, put it into production in most cases. And most cases where it has been put into production, and especially when it's been put into production that's customer facing, it has not gone well in a lot of cases. And the most extreme example, I believe, is the Air Canada one, right? Was where they ended up. I think that's the one, I may be wrong,
Right.
Where there was a huge mess up and they ended up owing somebody a lot of money. But I
Yes,
could be wrong about that.
it is Air Canada. Yes.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there, so, and I think your guide Srinivas was, look, use it to help automate and improve processes that are internal, but it needs heavy oversight internally to be able to be used in a production environment, internally facing. And it's going to take a little bit longer time, and you think maybe a year or sometime inside a year, before we can begin to think about moving it beyond that phase. Did I say all this properly?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So I think, Cheryl, when you see it, that's kind of the answer that you can take back. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing with the firm that we contracted with. It's just internal decision making and automation.
Yeah, and that's a good, I think that's a good case, and that's what Srinivas goes into. And so the thing about this is, Cheryl, is if anybody on your team there would like to know more about that, watch Srinivas's interview, because it does a great job of talking through the subtleties, probably much better than we did today. We kind of went through, right, we went around a lot of different subjects, but there are a lot of various areas here to work on. And Amit, did this help you at all with what, where Srinivas's head is about this stuff, and how we can say to ourselves, all right, when we're thinking about using these applications, how might we use them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good. And Stephen, did this help you?
Yeah, it was good to hear the conversation. It seems like everyone here has some good background from different perspectives, different industries than me. So it's good to hear, step out of my industry and hear without even knowing. I can just tell if you're outside of the government industry, you're further ahead than we are probably. So.
Well, and the only test I would say that I use, and I saw Amit laughing when I said it, ask it the same question 5 times. Same question. See what you get. See how far apart the answers are, right? Right, Srinivas? I mean, I may be wrong about that. Maybe I'm using a ham-fisted test, but that's how I did it with Copilot, and I've done it with others. Is just ask it the same question 5 times and see how far apart the answers are. And that supposedly, and I heard you when you were talking about this, Srinivas, you were saying supposedly it should be trending more toward what you expect the answer to be. right? Isn't that that's the whole idea, that it should be moving itself there. And if it's set up with the right set of data, it'll influence itself and it'll start limiting itself on this side. So it moves over here, right? It should be written that way. And Cheryl, that's the way you could start testing some of these things to make sure that it's actually heading itself in the direction you expect it to. And if it keeps giving you the exact same answer, it's probably got too many guardrails on it. So it's not actually improving itself. Now, again, Srinivas gets into all this in our interview, and he's going to get in deeper in the next one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, in Cheryl's case, I would say a lot of effort has to be invested in fine-tuning to their purpose.
Yeah. So I want to let you all go. And I know Professor Silberstein gets the last word, although I monopolized this. But you can tell, I mean, I've lived with this for a long time. I love it. And I'm just enjoying the heck out of it these days. But there's a lot here. There's a lot here. I'll send all of you all. And I know, Nahid, you didn't make it tonight, but I'll make sure you get this too. I'll send you all some of this stuff. I'll send you links to the movie and all that sort of thing, so you guys can decide whether you want to play or not.
Okay. For my last word, I'll say we only covered the first of my points, and then we got into interesting stuff. There's so much to say about AI. This is why we're going to have the ongoing discussions in our AI discussion groups. And also, as you know, you should have gotten the notice, we're resuming the Sunday morning discussion groups, the one upcoming soon. I am going to mention an article. I always try to point you to reading material. This was an article in the MIT Tech Review. It's dated July 10th, 2024, and it's called What is AI? That's the title of it. And I recommend that everyone read this because it touches on a number of these loony points we're all starting to hear about in a very coherent way. And a well-written way. It gets on, I mean, we've actually, and I haven't made a point of it, but one of Professor Cowan and my ongoing conversation is, what is this AI stuff that we're talking about? And very generally, we figure out that most people, most journalists, don't know what they're talking about when they're talking about AI. And this article is a very good way to start the conversation of the different tracks of how AI is developing and the different forms of AI. And it gets to a point that I do want to cover at some point, and that's whether AGI is even worth pursuing. And why are the tech companies spending so many billions of dollars pursuing it? And how useful would this be? And then we're starting to see, and this article starts to get into it, that it's almost becoming a religion among some of the tech companies that they need to pursue AGI, and why are they doing this, and what do they hope to accomplish? So again, this is an article from the MIT Tech Review dated July 10th, 2024, called What is AI? And with that, Professor Cowan.
Yes, we should let you all get on with your evening. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this. We really appreciate it. And I'll send something to you, and we'll see you all soon.
Yes, very good. Okay, so long all.
Bye.